The Violin of Verona. The air in Verona's Via della Musica, where the Conti workshop stood, always hummed with a quiet symphony. It was the subtle vibration of wood being coaxed into song, the sweet, resinous scent of cedar and spruce, and the gentle scraping of tools against ebony. Isabella Conti, her fingers nimble and stained with amber varnish, knew this symphony better than the chaotic clamor of the city's market. With her father, a man whose hands were as wise as an ancient tree, she crafted violins that were more than instruments. They were vessels for the soul, ready to sing. Each curve of the belly, each precise cut of the F-holes, was a testament to patience and a profound love for music. One sweltering afternoon in 1810, as the distant thud of cannon fire rumbled like an angry god beyond the Veronese hills, a shadow fell across the sun-drenched doorway of their shop. A soldier stood there, his uniform faded to the color of dust, his face a landscape of fatigue and sorrow. This was Matteo Rossi. His eyes, though heavy, held a flicker of something indefinable. A longing, perhaps, or a desperate hope. He carried no musket, no bayonet, only a single, well-worn sword, its hilt polished smooth by years of desperate grips. "I cannot pay you," he said, his voice surprisingly soft, a stark contrast to the harshness of his appearance. He gestured to the rows of gleaming violins. "But if you would trade me one of your creations for this," he lifted the sword, its steel glinting dully in the dim light, "I swear I will carry music instead of steel from this day forth." Isabella, usually reserved, felt an unexpected tremor in her heart. Her father, a gruff but discerning man, raised an eyebrow, about to refuse. But something in Matteo's earnest gaze, the profound weariness in his shoulders, the quiet dignity of his offer, stopped her. She saw not a soldier, but a soul yearning for beauty in a world consumed by ugliness. "Wait, Papa," she said, stepping forward. "We can do this." For days, she worked with a focused intensity, pouring all her skill and a sudden, fierce hope into the instrument. She selected the finest aged spruce for the top, the most exquisitely flamed maple for the back. She carved the scroll with a particular flourish, imbuing it with a silent prayer for peace. The varnish she chose was a deep, lustrous crimson, like old wine or the blush of a sunset over Lake Garda. And on the bridge, a secret detail, she carved her initials. I see a silent signature of her promise. Finally, the violin was ready. Its voice, still unawakened, lay waiting within its polished curves. When she presented it to Matteo, he took it with a reverence that touched her deeply. His calloused fingers, more accustomed to the cold grip of steel, cradled the instrument as if it were spun from moonlight. He lifted it to his shoulder, a hesitant breath escaping his lips. Then he drew the bow across the strings. The first notes were tentative, a little shaky, but even so, the sound that filled the workshop was pure and resonant, shimmering like sunlight through stained glass, chasing away the shadows of war. It was a melody of longing, of unspoken dreams, of a peace that felt impossibly distant yet suddenly, vibrantly real. "It sings," he murmured, his eyes closed, lost in the sound. He opened them and met Isabella's gaze. "Thank you. It is more precious than any victory." He gently lowered the violin. "When I play this again," he promised, his voice low but clear, "you'll know peace has come." With a final lingering look, he turned and walked out of the shop, leaving behind the echo of a melody and the faint imprint of hope. Years crawled by. The drums of war continued to beat their mournful rhythm across Italy. News from the battlefields was always grim. Verona saw soldiers come and go, heard tales of distant sieges and hard-won victories that felt hollow. Isabella worked, her hands ever busy, but her heart held a quiet vigil. Every violin she crafted seemed to carry a piece of that promise, the gentle curve of its F-holes mirroring the hope Matteo had left behind. She grew into a woman of quiet strength, her reputation as a luthier growing with each passing season. Then one glorious spring morning, precisely 10 years to the day since Matteo had departed, the city of Verona awoke to a sound unlike any other. The bells of the Duomo, usually rung for mass or mournful processions, pealed with an exuberant, joyful abandon. People streamed into the cobbled streets, laughter and cheers erupting. The war was over, a treaty signed. An age of weary conflict finally concluded. Isabella, in her workshop, froze. Amidst the joyous din of the city, rising above the celebratory cries and the triumphant clang of bells, a melody began to weave its way through the narrow streets. It was a single violin, distinct and resonant. She knew that tone. She knew it in her bones, in the deepest part of her soul. It was the voice of her own creation, the very instrument she had shaped with her hands and her heart, its sound a vibrant, living presence. Without a moment's thought, she dropped her tools and ran. Her apron fluttered behind her as she dashed through the crowds, her breath catching in her throat, her eyes scanning every face. The sound drew her, a powerful magnet, to the heart of the city, the Piazza delle Erbe. There, bathed in the golden spring sunlight, stood Matteo. He was older now, his face deeply lined by sun and time, his dark hair threaded with silver, and his uniform, though still that of a soldier, was faded to a soft, forgiving gray. The years had etched their story onto him, but as he stood in the center of the piazza, his eyes closed. The crimson violin tucked beneath his chin, he was utterly transformed. The melody he played was one of profound peace, of hard-won joy, of a promise finally fulfilled. As he finished the last, lingering note, his eyes opened. He swept his gaze across the cheering crowd. And then slowly they found her. Isabella. Her name was a silent whisper between them. Carried on the lingering notes of the violin. A smile, slow and incredibly tender, spread across his face, chasing away the shadows of the past. The music did not stop, not truly. It continued to sing in the silence between their hearts. That day, the people of Verona spoke of the bells, of the treaty, of the peace that had finally returned. But more than that, they spoke of a single violin, whose voice had brought an entire city to a joyous halt. And they spoke of the quiet, profound understanding in the gaze between the luthier's daughter and the soldier who had traded his sword for song. A promise kept through silence, war, and the relentless march of time.